Now, over the last few hours, government officials have been falling over themselves to supposedly clarify the statement made earlier this afternoon by the Director General of the Communications Authority of Kenya, Francis Wangusi. Now, Wangusi has said in broad daylight that he would switch off all SIM cards whose owners would not have acquired a Huduma number by May 18th. That is supposed to be the last day of the government's imposed registration period. Since then, State House, as well as the Ministry of Information, Communications and Technology, have restated that the Huduma registration process is voluntary and that they would focus on civic education and not switching off people's phone numbers. Wangusi, too, has tried some damage control. Now, this is bad. Think about it. How did a public servant in the caliber of Francis Wangusi get the idea that he had powers to switch off SIM cards merely on account of Huduma number? Did he just sit down all by himself to come up with this ridiculous idea? I mean, it truly is ridiculous. First, it presupposes that failing to acquire a Huduma number is criminal. Never mind that the court has pronounced itself so unequivocally on this matter. Secondly, that he, Wangusi, has the power to stand on a podium and pronounce judgment on that matter. His statement also presupposes that the supposed crime is punishable by a certain strange remedy known as switching off SIM cards. Now, even if you were to assume that failing to register for this number is a crime, would it be the worst crime ever committed in this country to warrant such a drastic measure? I mean, I may have missed it, but has Wangusi ever threatened to switch off the numbers of those who steal billions of shillings from public coffers almost on a daily basis? Remember the numerous phone calls made during the looting of NYS in that major scandal 3 years ago? Has Wangusi ever threatened to switch off the numbers of all those murderers in this country? Or is there something we do not know about this Huduma number? But let me calm down. There has been a clarification, isn't it, from ICTPS Jerome Ochieng, and yes, there is also one from the Chief of Staff at State House, no less, Nzioka Waita. And yes, even Wangusi himself has eaten his words after his bosses disowned him and citizens protested. But here is my question. Does it mean that even within government, there is such lack of clarity on this Huduma number that every official works it out as they go along? I mean, shouldn't it be clear whether this Huduma number initiative is compulsory or whether it's voluntary? Wangusi is not a junior officer, let's face it. And if there is any government position on Huduma number, he surely would know it. Or is it just a case of an excited government official doing anything, however ridiculous, just to please the bosses up there? I have no idea, but I'm beginning to think there is a serious need of a serious political opposition grouping. Not just people who say they are still in the opposition, but people who will truly keep the government in check. Otherwise, next time, don't be surprised if someone threatens to switch off the phones of those who have not paid dowry. That is my angle tonight.
Wow. Yeah. This week, MPs allied to the Deputy President had their security withdrawn. Kikuyu Town MP Kimani Ichung'wah confirmed this in an interview here on Citizen TV. He and others, including senators and Governor Waititu, all say they are yet to receive official communication regarding this withdrawal. The police spokesman said it is part of what he called reorganization of police services personnel, and that it was not targeted at specific individuals. I have no doubt police often need to reorganize all sorts of things. But this all sounds familiar, doesn't it? You see, in this country, it seems that this has become a common tool against people who may say or do something that makes powerful people in government uncomfortable. In 2018, the government withdrew the security detail attached to West Pokot Governor John Lonyangapuo. Police County Commander Matthew Kuto confirmed that security officers assigned to the governor's official residence in Kapenguria and his Mukurjit home had been recalled. This after the governor confronted police officers and freed a border operator who had been arrested by officers. In 2017, security detail attached to then NASA leaders was withdrawn on the eve of their protests against the IEBC. In 2018, Wiper Party leader moved to court after his security was withdrawn on the eve of the controversial swearing-in of Raila Odinga. Lady Justice Rosalind Aburili in fact summoned the CS and the IG to explain why they had not restored his security despite a court order to do so. One could go further into the Moi regime, where the security detail of the then Vice President, Dr. Josphat Karanja, was withdrawn as the ground was prepared to push him out. And did I hear today that the Deputy President was not received by key county officials in Nyeri, as is the norm? For a start, these examples are testament to intolerance and are manifest of government overreach. State functionaries cannot resort to intimidation tactics when people say or do something that they or their bosses do not like, whether it is a protest against IEBC, a protest against police action, or indeed whether one declares support for the Deputy President or any other politician or party. It is, however, instructive to note that some of the current victims cheered when it happened to their opponents back then. Is it any wonder that the great Martin Luther King talked of injustice anywhere being a threat to justice everywhere? Everyone must learn to condemn that which is wrong or unjust, regardless of political inclination or any other persuasion. You never know when it'll be your turn, for when government goes rogue, it is only a matter of time before it literally eats even its own children. For like the great American moral and political philosopher John Rawls once said, when contemplating a moral action, imagine that you do not know if you will be the moral doer or receiver, and when in doubt, err on the side of the other person. And that is my take tonight.
Good one, Yvonne.
Good one.
Very good.
Tonight on my kicker, I will talk about the law of holes. Holes, pits, or mashimo for Kiswahili speakers, who, by the way, very wisely note that mchimba kisima huingia mwenyewe, meaning he who digs a pit actually gets into it. Now, the first law of the holes is one old adage that says, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. This adage has been used as a metaphor that when you find yourself in an untenable situation, the first best thing to do is to stop digging. Sample this. The weatherman is consistently on the doomsday message. The traditional long rains are not happening this season, and the prolonged drought will only get worse. The list of sectors taking a direct hit from the protracted dry spell is alarmingly long. Farmers whose seeds have gone dead in the soil during what is supposed to be the planting season. Pastoralist communities that rely on traditional rain cycles are watching as their animals turn into bony carcasses. The health sector is battling with an outbreak of waterborne diseases. Businesses are experiencing a sharp spike in the cost of doing business, and individuals are feeling the heat, even if quite literally. And as Kenyans contend with natural disasters, man-made catastrophes are lining up for their pound of flesh. Government has just hiked the price of fuel by 5 shillings, effectively pushing up the cost of living, particularly the cost of basic commodities such as food. This fact has been illustrated here and elsewhere in this program and in all national news outlets. This is the bottom line. These are hard times for Kenyans, and Kenyans are already in deep suffering. We are in a pit, and that means we must stop digging. The current state of affairs make improbable, if not entirely impossible, some of the good intentions of the government, such as the Big Four agenda, whose delivery date on paper is just a short 3 years away. Stuck in a national pit as Kenyans are, these intentions must now be weighed against the reality of our collective whole. We must now ask these questions. How do we enhance manufacturing when the costs of operations, the cost of doing business is shooting through the roof? How do we deliver on food security and nutrition when dams and irrigation are bywords for mega corruption? How do we even talk food security when the 1 million acre irrigation promise called Galana Kulalu turns out to be an embarrassing 5,000 acre failure, billions of shillings later? How do we deliver universal health care in an environment of low accountability, whether on the medical equipment leasing scheme, mobile clinics, or outright pilferage of public funds at both national and county health structures? And how do we dare think of building 500,000 government housing units against a backdrop of spiraling public debt? It doesn't take an economist or even a space scientist to tell things don't work that way in normal life, least of all inside the hole we are in. Here is my submission this Holy Thursday. First, the Affordable Housing Project and its supposed enabler, the housing levy, should be dropped like the hot brick it is. Overburdened Kenyans cannot afford it for a start. And secondly, the project bears all the hallmarks of a white elephant in waiting, a Nyayo bus made of bricks, just another promise waiting to be broken. The Affordable Housing Project should instead be immediately replaced with the war on corruption as a Big Four agenda item. By fighting corruption, the other 3 Big Four items will be safe and could well be delivered on time by 2022. By confronting corruption, cartels that control both the maize and sugar sector would be putting on check, and the Kenyan farmer will once again become the focal point of national food security and nutrition agenda. By fighting graft, impunity will be put on check in the health sector and money channeled to the intended purposes under the universal healthcare scheme. And of course, it goes without saying that the local manufacturing sector would thrive in an environment free of corruption. So, over now to President Uhuru Kenyatta. President, switch things around this long weekend. Shelve that affordable housing project and bring in the war on corruption as your Big Four agenda item. Your Excellency, you've never seen a faster, authentic lane to a lasting legacy. As a famous brand puts it, just do it.
Wow.
Yeah, Jamila, just do it now.
Sasa memo imefika. Okay. My memo today is about character assassination. That may not sound new, but believe me, it is getting way out of hand. In our African culture, we honor and respect the dead, and woe unto those who dare insult departed loved ones. But I'm worried about an emerging trend that is insulting that very tradition of respecting the dead, that of character assassination of the departed, from the safety of the anonymity behind our keyboards or keypads these days, thanks to affordable smartphones. A lot of it is online, where seemingly everyone who posts is either a paragon of virtue, a literally giant, or some other grand being who generously espouses judgment on lesser mortals. Some of these lesser beings are unfortunately dead. The living can defend themselves from accusations leveled against them, whether true or not. But the dead sadly cannot answer back, or in this case, type and post a response on social media. Smear campaigns, hashtags, and misrepresentation of facts, or even plain lies, to be honest, are the order of the day. These so-called keyboard warriors have no care in the world about the damage they are causing. I say this because of the trending story of the late Ivy Wangeshi, who was laid to rest today at her family home in Othaya. Ivy was brutally murdered in broad daylight in Eldoret. But immediately after the gruesome murder, social media was awash with theories of how it happened and who she was, some even suggesting that she deserved that very cruel death that cut short her young life just a day before she turned 25. Despite never having heard or met her before this unfortunate incident, she was called Slay Queen, Gold Digger, and Money Hungry. I can only imagine her mother's pain as she stepped out to face media cameras for the first time to defend the character of her daughter. Winfred Waithera said, and I quote, "I want to make it clear that the Ivy the bloggers are talking about and trying to portray in bad light is not the same one we knew. The Ivy we knew was God-fearing, disciplined, and one who did not depend on or have sponsors. I never met Ivy myself, but from the aggregate of the information given about her, this was a young, intelligent, beautiful 25-year-old woman on an upward trajectory in what would certainly have been a promising career in medicine. She was in her 6th year, studying one of the most difficult courses, one that takes a long time to complete. We all know what is required for one to be admitted to medical school. It is no mean feat. Ivy was an A student. This does not support the profile of lazy Slay Queen as portrayed on social media. We may never know all the details of the events that preceded her death, but nothing can ever justify the taking away of another's life other than as provided for under the law. I am alarmed by the culture that assaults our norms, offends all our sensibilities, and robs the dead of their dignity. A dignity which is really the least we owe them, by our posts, our utterances, or just by simply shutting up. That's my memo.
Well, and let me take it home. And I want to do it with some poem. There's a very famous poem called Harlem by Langston Hughes. Let me tell you what it says. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like a rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And just like Langston Hughes poses, what happens to a dream deferred? Tonight, I want to ask, what is in a promise? More precisely, what is the value of a Jubilee administration promise? Is it something worth taking seriously? Is it something worth waiting for? And does it matter when President Uhuru Kenyatta and his team say, and will they keep a promise or not? Well, do you remember the laptops promise? It remains one of the highlights of the Jubilee administration. Many children waited and waited and waited. Eventually, they were told that the laptops would be replaced with tablets. Then computer labs. You all know how that story ended. The wait continues. Many primary schools, especially in rural areas, eagerly await the fulfillment of that promise. I'm sure you have not forgotten the Stadia promise. 5 of them, brand new. In fact, we were told they will be international standard. Something like Kasarani or Nyayo Stadium. None yet. With just 3 years to the end of Kenyatta's 2-term tenure, then now there's a promise for 500,000 housing units. Let us do some basic arithmetic, Let us even give the government the benefit of doubt to fulfill this housing promise. Within 3 years, the government will have to construct at least 460 housing units every day. Will it be achievable? I highly doubt. But I could be wrong. But even if the new housing units won't be there by August 2022, I won't be surprised. I wasn't surprised when the laptops were not delivered. I wasn't when the 5 stadia did not happen. Will you be surprised if this housing promise, the universal health care, the food security, and the manufacturing promises are not kept? Well, a small piece of advice to you. Don't be surprised. In any case, what is in a Jubilee promise? And that is my punchline.
Hi. Waxing lyrical tonight, eh?
Harlem.
Koi Town.
Huh? You have a poem for us tonight.
Yes. Next time I'll give you another one.
There's someone who said on Twitter that they're hoping that not having a Huduma number will cause you to be blocked from all things, including paying taxes.
Ile 30% hakuna kukatwa?
No, because the government doesn't even recognize you. Amazing.
Well, that's it.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Or is it ladies and gentlemen?
Ni sawa tu.
And tomorrow is Good Friday.
Yep.
We meet at the Way of the Cross.
Yep.
And enjoy your Easter weekend.
Indeed. Happy Easter to everyone. And even as you celebrate with family and friends and take a break, please remember the reason for the season. Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter. Good night.
All right.